morning, everyone. The topic I want to introduce today is the science theories behind beauty, how we define beauty, and why are we uncontrollably fascinated by attractive faces. It is said that never judge a book by its cover. Before starting, I would like to do a little survey. Does anybody here have never judged a person by its appearance?
No.
If you do, raise your hand. Yeah? Although we might not want to admit, but in this society, appearance really matters. And some people who with attractive faces might take advantages over others. And among crowds, there are many people who enjoy watching beautiful girls or handsome boys. Sometimes they are called the lookism. It triggered my curiosity about the reasons behind it, so I decided to do the research on it. Today's presentation will be separated into two parts. First, we will discuss how our brand defined beauty, and there are three little chapters in it. They are the averaging, symmetry, and hormones. The second part, we will talk about the science theories behind beauty, which could separate into the visual cortex, the connection, and our stereotype. When it comes to define our beauty standards, it is totally subjective. However, there are still 3 points that related the most to our beauty standards. The first one is the averaging and the symmetry. And the last one is the effects that our hormones brought us. First, we will talk about the averaging. Dr. Johnson has which is known as his pioneering in human intelligence, has his theories that the composite faces and the average faces will be more attractive than those who contributes to make the balance among crowds. Why are the reasons behind it? It is actually according to our nature. The average faces usually represent our major bias in a group of people, while the composite represents the combination of different kinds of humans. And they also represent the more genetic diversity and better adaptability in the environment. That's why people will found composite faces or really average faces better than those who are in the betweens. The second is the symmetry. Scientists have found that symmetric faces will be more attractive than asymmetric faces, because this usually represents some kind of developmental abnormalities. And in some plants or animals, they are somehow caused by parasitic infection. And that's why the symmetric became an indicator of health, and people tend to be fascinated with healthy things. There are some plastic surgeries like brow lifting or contouring that now trying to improve the symmetry on people's faces. The third part, we will talk about the effects that our hormones brought to us, but it only based on the premise that everyone is heterosexuality. So sometimes it doesn't work. We have two kinds. We have different. The girls and the male and female have different hormones. One is the estrogen and the testosterone. These two helped us to shape our beauty standards. The estrogen, the features that caused by estrogens usually provide fertility, and men found women more attractive with both maturity and young on their faces, because two baby-like face might not mean they are not yet fertile. So let's look at this picture. They usually tend to be fascinated with big eyes and full lips and thin cheeks, which represent young. And while they will like the high cheekbones, which is the feature of maturity women. The features that provided by testosterone usually represent masculine, we will like the heavier eyebrows and thinner cheeks and the square-like jaws. However, the hormones is not an indicator of health. It is different from estrogen. Let's take the peacock's tail as an example. Its tail actually doesn't help it to avoid predators, and it will make it difficult for the peacocks to approach peahens. Charles Darwin once found it difficult to explain it in his theory of natural selection, since this kind of cumbersome organ doesn't evolve after time. So then he developed another theory, which is the sexual selection. In this theory, it explained that the reason why peacock keep this cumbersome thing is to show that he has the ability to maintain this extravagant appendage, which means he is healthier. Just like a man who wore Rolex trying to show his financial fitness, but are they really wealthy? There are many facts behind it. So the peacocks who show trying to display his healthy might not be really healthy. Besides those three reasons, there are one more things that only human has. That is the public aesthetic. And for years, scientists have done research on it. Let's take one experiment as a sample. Let's assume that these groups have three kinds of preferences. They are for red, for orange, and for green. After years, they started to have offspring, and it became like this in their second generation. People who prefer green take the larger parts, and after 10 generations, the percentage raised to 98%, which means the green become universal preference inside the crowd. It can be subjective for us to be fascinated by some specific parts of a person, but when these features started to show it's heritable and it become related to reproductive advantages, it will become universal. It will become universal preference. Then we're going to talk about the science theory behind beauty. Why are we uncontrollably fascinated by those faces? It is actually related to our physical reaction. There's one thing called the visual cortex, which will be stimulated when we see beautiful faces. They are at the back part of our brain, and they include two parts, which is the fusiform gyrus and the lateral occipital complex. This part is to processing faces, and this part is attuned to processing objects. Besides, it will also stimulate the reward and pleasure center deep in our mind and in the front of our mind. It concludes some uncomplicated nouns, which is the ventral striatum and the medical or the frontal cortex and other parts, and works from the inside out, which would transform when you see beautiful faces. The second part is our connection with beauty. We can actually, if we have to define, everyone is a lookism, because we can't help to connect things with beauty even though we are not thinking about beauty. In an experiment, the testers are asked to define, to signify if the people in the two pictures are the same one or the different one. This mission for them is to identify the faces. However, they still test their neural and visual cortex are stimulated, which means they have connection with beauty. However, that's not their main mission, but they are just automatically connect things with beauty. And it turns out the results that we will make connection between vision and pleasure, and we can't control to think about beauty even when we are not whatever we are doing. Then situation becomes worse. We even have stereotype about beautiful people. This has something to do with our orbitofrontal cortex in the front of our mind. The part we deal with beauty and the part we signify goodness is highly overlapped, which means when they occur together, when something occurs, we will signify that beauty equals to goodness. And this reflexively action might cause what we have mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, that people who have attractive faces always take advantages of others. And what unfortunately is, we also have stereotype with those disfigured faces. We often connect them as a bad image. This is absolutely, we can find that in media, that many villainous characters inside the movie have disfigured face. The scars and the evil scientist in Wonder Woman, and also Voldemort. In conclusion, we can realize that we can't help but to judge a book by its cover. However, in my opinion, the reason why human is called the soul of the universe is because that we don't rely on only nature. Above nature, we still have wisdom. So realizing this kind of bias is just one of the way for us to get rid of it and try to create a fair society and judge a person's behavior instead of his looks. That's all about me. That's all from me. Thank you.